So I'll go ahead and welcome everybody tonight. My name is Natalie Fritz, and I am the Archivist and Outreach Director for the Clark County Historical Society. And I spend most of my time, when I'm not running around all over the building, in the research library and archives. But our special guests tonight, Bob and Flossie, you'll see if you come into the library and archives on a Wednesday or Thursday. They're with the Clark County Genealogical Society and volunteers for the Historical Society. So Flossie will be there to help you if you come in on either of those days to help with genealogical research, and they're both with the Clark County Genealogical Society. So Bob had asked a while back, when we talked about all the virtual programs we do, why didn't you guys do a virtual program about genealogy? I said, well, duh, that seems like a no-brainer. We should have done that a long time ago, because we have a lot of great resources in our archives, and we, can tell you a little bit more about how to find stuff. So tonight's program, we're going to focus on how to do genealogy, how to get started, and it's kind of organized by type of record. We're focusing specifically on Clark County, but we'll give you some tips about how to look for stuff in other states and in other counties, how to get started with that. It's kind of dense slides that we have here that have a lot of very specific information about how to find records, what years are covered, and where applicable, there's links directly to websites. So this is something that we'll have, as with all of our other virtual program, it's being recorded, and it will be later available to you on our Facebook page and our YouTube channel. And since these are slides here, you can request these slides, and then you'll get ones that have a clickable link, so you'll be able to follow some of the links that are in here, because there's lots of great websites out there aside from the paper resources that we're going to talk about, and we want to be able to help you get you directly to those. So we're happy to share that, we want to help in your search, and I've got more information at the end of the slides here about how you can join the Clark County Genealogical Society and get more information from them and get tips from them, and be part of their community where other people are looking for their family history here in Clark County. So that's also a really great resource and good community there that you can be a part of. So Bob and Flossie, I wanted you guys to go ahead and introduce yourself. I'll just move to the next slide, but I thought you guys could tell a little bit about the Clark County Genealogical Society and what you guys do at the Heritage Center.
Okay, you want me to talk now, Natalie?
Yeah.
Okay, it's $12 a year for a single member or $15 for a family, and we meet Monday. We meet 9 months of the year. We don't meet in July and August, and we don't meet in December. We normally have a speaker. Sometimes, like, we have a potluck coming up, and we don't have a speaker for that one in June. But normally there's always a speaker. We meet at the library at the Park Shopping Center in their conference room in the back by the children's area. And our genealogy, this office is right beside the Historical Society's library. We really don't even meet in there. We use that for our lunch and our goodies that we bring in. But we do have surname files, which through the years, the various people who have answered surname requests, we've kept those. And Elaine Roller has gone through all of those and has cross-indexed those on index cards. When I have done the research for people, I always keep an extra copy. Earlier, I'm not sure that they did, but when I have done it and do now, I keep an extra copy, which was luckily for one man who wrote and said, do you happen to have a copy of what you did for me? My house burned and I don't have it anymore. So I did make copies for him and sent that. We also have the index cards from Ferncliff Cemetery up to about 1990. There's a few extra that aren't in the actual folders. I don't think Natalie even knows about those. I haven't been in them much because I haven't needed any after 1990. But those also tell the burial, why, the death, how they died, the death part, if it's on, if they have it. When the Genealogy Society copied those and tried to, and was going to sell them, they only did books alphabetized of A surnames and B surnames. And they promised they would not give the cause of death. So those are not in that book, but the cause of deaths are still on all the other index cards. And Natalie has access to all of whatever is in our genealogy office. So if you need something, she knows where to go. She knows how to find it. You can also be a member of Settlers or First Families, and that depends on the year that your ancestor came to Clark County. So that's all I'm going to say right now, Natalie. I'm going to turn it back over to you.
Okay. I have a question. What are you guys seeing on your screen? Are you seeing the full slides view? No, it is showing the wrong one. I need to swap it.
We're looking at probate court.
Yeah, I need to swap it so that you don't see both of mine. So let me figure that out real quick. There we go. Now you see the right one. Sorry about that, guys. You were seeing my next slide. So you're seeing the preview of what was coming up next. So Flossie, I know that, and you can talk more about it later. What members of the Genealogical Society get a newsletter, and you can talk a little bit about what kind of content you put into that newsletter. But one of the things, so we are going to focus mainly on what you can find here at the Heritage Center, but I wanted to give you guys a general overview of what they have specifically here in Clark County and where to look for those records and who to contact. So if you come to the Heritage Center, we are on the 3rd floor in the research library. We're under the clock tower portion of the building. The entrance is by Mundo across from the fountain. I do prefer that you make an appointment, or at least let me know what day you're coming, so we can make sure that we're here and have somebody that can help you, or we can maybe help look up stuff in advance that you're looking for. If you give us a general idea of like what family names or things that you're looking for, we can try and have that when you arrive. But we're open Wednesday through Friday from 10 to 5 and Saturdays from 10 to 3. I know Bob and Flossie are both here on Wednesday and Thursday, so Flossie is able to help you with any research there, and we can do outside research. So you can write to the Clark County Genealogical Society, you can write to the Clark County Historical Society. We'll use our resources available to try and answer requests that are outside if you can't come in to do research. The Clark County Public Library is another really great site to find information. If you come in and you go over to the right now, they have their information desk off to the right. Kathy Hackett is the head of that department. But there's multiple librarians that can help you there with your search, and they have their microfilm for like deeds. I just found out recently from Patty Ark that they have house deeds that I did not realize that they had over there. I thought they just had land deeds. So they've got that. They've got microfilm for newspapers. They've got all sorts of resources over there. The New Carlisle Public Library is not part of the Clark County Public Library branch system. They have their own their library, but they can help you with research there as well, or any of the branch libraries at Clark County Public Library can help. The courthouse, common pleas records, and that department is on the 2nd floor at down on Limestone. The picture over here on the right, and the Clark County Municipal Building, is on the 2nd floor, and probate is on the 5th floor over there if you're wanting to go directly for records there. But we'll tell you other places where you can find some of those same records that you can get in those areas. So I wanted to although this is going to focus more on what's here in Clark County, wanted to give you tips for other places in Ohio. So if you're in Ohio still and outside Clark County, I have to tell you that every county is different. I don't know if anyone can speak to the way they work, but the ones I'm more familiar with are Greene and Montgomery County, because those are closest to us. Greene and Montgomery both have a record center and archives. Plus, they also have a historical society. We don't have a record center here in Clark County. The county keeps their own records like that. We do. So we just have, so basically if a record comes to the Historical Society, it becomes a keep forever record. If you have a record center, they have to worry about retention schedules and things like that. We don't worry about that. Once it comes to the Historical Society, it's a keep forever type of record. If you're looking for other counties, I tell you the best place to start is Google, to just look up if there's a historical society in the county that you're looking for. So the best place to start if you're trying to do family research is to at least narrow down areas of the state where you want to look. So if you know a city where someone is from, figure out what county that is in and see if there's a county historical society. The Ohio History Connection in Columbus is a really great resource for the entire state, because they have a lot of state records from all different counties, but they can also help point you in the right direction for your county if you can't find that information online. So I have their phone number and reference email on here as well. If you're searching outside Ohio, again, try and figure out what county you're looking at. You might be looking for a county historical society. You might be looking for a courthouse. Those are two main resources where you're going to find stuff, is it a historical society, or the courthouse would have like your probate records, common pleas, that kind of stuff. So you might contact those directly. But it's hard to tell you exactly what each county is, because everybody keeps their stuff differently. There's not like an overall arching law for Ohio that says everybody has to keep these kinds of records for this amount of time, and then they're in this location. It kind of differs from county to county. And if you're outside Ohio, you might check to see what the State Historical Society can tell you, if they have records themselves, or if they can point you in the right direction. And something that we use quite a lot, I know Flossie uses Family Search probably more than any of the sites, but familysearch.org is the free genealogical site, and ancestry.com is the paid one. But they have their records databases cover other states and countries. There's a separate membership for going outside the United States if you need to look at international records on Ancestry. But I know that it's a way, like if researchers come in here, we can do a general search on Family Search or Ancestry, and it will reach beyond our building of things that we can find for people. So those are really great resources. And I go into some of the slides, we go into a little more detail, but with Family Search, I know that it's free, but you do still have to set up an account with that. So you'll have to set up an ID and a login to use it. So then I break it down by types of records. So again, Bob and Flossie, jump in anywhere if you have any stories, is like, finding something or anything that's not on here. But birth records locally, you can get them in person, phone, email, letters. You can write to the Heritage Center. So we have them at the Heritage Center. We have the original birth books, and we also have the microfilm. So the issue when someone calls us and they need the probate, or they need to look at births and we need to look at probate, is there's not a neat little card index like there is with the health department, another record. You have to go to the books or the microfilm and flip to the index to find it. So those take.
Can I get in here a minute now?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, the books themselves are not indexed. They have no page numbers. We have index cards for the birth and the death at the Historical Society Library. They kept 1908, no, they kept 1909 and 1910 records, because that's when the health department started. That's from 1908 and up. You get them from the health department. But 1909 and 1910 are in their books. When they started charging $22 for these records, they kept those index cards. I had a man tell me he wanted a death from the index, from the book. And I said, no, we don't have any. There's no index cards. He came to the library and he looked at the books and he said, there it is, right there. And it was at that point that I realized there are no index cards. They kept them. So I went through all the birth books, the birth book and the death book, and I hand copied all the 1909 and all the 1910 births and deaths and indexed them. So those are on top of the cupboard where all these index cards are kept. So we do have access to them. They're also on microfiche in our genealogy office, we have, some of those are missing, but we do have them on microfiche, so you can print those out. And the health department records for the deaths tell you where they're buried. The ones in probate do not mention burial, where they're buried. Okay.
So those are two sources that you can find we have probate and health department, and they cover separate years. So like the probate starts a little bit earlier. They go 1867. The health department goes 20 years later. They don't start until 1887. And I know I have a note on here that there's no birth records for Ohio prior to 1867. But Yolanda in the comments noted that there are a few counties. She said it thinks that 9 of them in Ohio that have birth and death records for between 1856 and 57. So if you're in one of those lucky 9 counties, you can find a birth record earlier than 1867. So I always tell people that that goes across the state, but apparently that's not true. But I have the cost. I don't know if that's up to date for if you call the health department to get a birth record. It's $22. But a good thing to note that even if you were not born in Clark County, if you were born in Ohio, you can contact the Clark County Health District and ask for your birth record from another county. So like, I know that I needed to have my birth record for getting my passport renewed and couldn't find my copy. So I was like, oh, I'm going to have to go to Summit County to find that. And I found out that I could go to Clark County and request my birth record, which saved me a lot of time. It does not apply for death records, but for death records, you do still need to go to the county where they died to get that. But that is a good thing to know that you can get. Yeah,
on the death, you can get those on Family Search up to 1956 and print them yourself without having to go to the health department.
Which that's, oh, I would say that's 2 slides from now, but 56 is actually later than I realized. Adoption, I figured we put adoption records in there. Those are a difficult one. And the laws are still changing with the access to adoption records, but the ones that are between 60s and the 90s, you can get access to those records using the Ohio Health Department. But anything prior to 1964, so probably the really early family records that you're looking for, they have to, the adoptees or their lineal descendants have to submit an application and to improve their linkage to be able to get those records. We actually have a hand copied book, I believe, that Ann Benston had done of the adoption records that cover the years.
Who got what and who gave up what. That's all.
Yeah. But it's more information than we had because I'll talk under probate. That's also where adoption records fall under in Clark County, and those are not accessible through our probate records that we have on site. But that's in a couple of slides when we talk about probate. Marriage records, we have them at the archives. They also have the same probate books at the library that are the indexes for those. So there's 2 different sets of indexes. One is for the earliest years, 1818 to 1865, and then we've got another set that goes from 1866 to about 1925. And then our issue at the Heritage Center is we do have the marriage books for later, but we no longer have the index. So usually what I do is I call probate where they have all of it on their computer system, and I say I'm looking for a marriage for this person, which really we could do at any time, but usually when it's in-house, I try and look for it in-house. But I know that if it's after 1925, if the person doesn't know the date or the year, we can't go to the books to find it. So I usually just call probate and they can give me the information I need, and then I can go to our physical books.
But interrupt again.
Yeah.
Okay, the marriages when you up until about 1889, maybe 99, they only tell the date that they took out the license and bride and groom and the date they were married, if they were lucky that the priest or the minister, whoever it was, turned it back into the court. And so I went through some books, newspaper books from 1943 to 52, 61 to 65, 51 to 61 in the actual newspaper books. And anytime there was a marriage record mentioned, that told more than the name of the bride, the groom, and the date. I wrote it down, and I have these books that I have done.
So yeah,
Can you
and
see?
those are available in the
Yeah, those
library.
are
And,
available in the library.
and are they available for purchase from the
Yeah,
Genealogical
these
Society
two
too?
are. Yes, I
Yeah.
did those. But I
So
don't,
those
most people don't really want all those marriages. They just want to know their own that happens to be in there. But they're
so
there
those
in the library.
those are hand copied out where there wasn't an index or where they're not covered in
And
the,
they're
or it
indexed.
gives you a lot more information.
They're
Yeah.
indexed.
So if you find them in the index here at in our Clark County index, that means you'll find them on the microfilm where you can get those licenses.
Get the
That
same marriage, but
um,
even more information.
and then we have the marriage returns as well, which are the little tiny slips of paper that the pastor or whoever married you, the priest or wherever you were, would have had to return to the.
And I don't think those are online. I don't think
They're not online. So we have them in little packets by year. So that's a good kind of last resort kind of record if you can't find them anywhere else, or it's just another source of documentation that some people like to
And
have of a
sometimes it
marriage.
says that the father gave permission for the marriage on those papers.
And then that sometimes gives you a name. That's a really rare thing, because I know that's what a lot of people are looking for when they're trying to find a marriage record. They're hoping to find the parents' names. That wasn't a thing that was asked in those early marriage years. So you only find it like if the person was underage, and they have to be mentioned in those earliest marriages that we have. And then the public library, they have microfilm for the later years of marriages. The probate court, they have a marriage card index. And then online, there's an index of marriages from anything from 1992 to the present. So you can get certified copies there. And I know that sometimes people need certified copies of things for their records or research that they're doing. We do not provide any sort of certified records. We can't, like for a birth, we can pull the book, which is for the early birth, it's the only record that exists. You can scan it, you can take a picture of it. We can't photocopy them because they're too large to get on our copier. But those have to be, have to stand as the only information. We can't give you like a notarized or stamped copy like you can get from like the health department or anywhere else. Divorce records are available through Common Pleas. And Flossie, do you have any have you had any success actually getting those?
There lately, but there's a couple books over there that have the index. If you find the index, find the divorce that you want to find, then you go to another box, another place, and they have that same number, and that'll tell you there's a box number. And the box number of that information means that's in a box in their attic. So they have to go up to their attic to bring down that information from that box number, which takes a while. And I haven't done this recently, and there's a new clerk since I've done it. So I'm not sure if it's changed. It may be, and maybe not. I don't know. But
I know that they're going to be moving over there and doing construction. So the access, I know that when the A.B. Graham building was closed for a while, access was different as far as what you could get from those public buildings there. You mentioned a little bit about death records. We have the probate and health department books again, like we have for the birth records. It covers the same span of years: 1867 for the probate, 1887 for the health department. But the great thing about the health department cards are that it actually gives you a lot more information, tells you where they're buried and information there, and you can go to the microfiche to get that more information. The cards only gives you the month and year, but that at least tells you then that there's a microfiche that you need to go to. And Flossie mentioned earlier that we are missing some of the microfiche years. They walked many years ago before we were in this building. So that in those cases you have to go to the books. You can't go print it off of the microfiche.
And sometimes people notified the health department of the death, and they did not notify probate.
Or sometimes they didn't notify either.
Yeah, right. Or they did probate but not health department. So you never know. You have to check both places. That's what you have
And I tell people that just because your person that you were told was born or died in Clark County does not appear in our records, it doesn't mean that they that you were wrong. It just means that they slipped through the cracks because not everybody recorded it. So so death records, like I said, you have to go to the county where they died, at least in Ohio. I honestly don't know how it works in other states. But if you need a death record, you have to go to the county where that person died. You can't get them for like you can with the birth records. So probate is another big source for finding information. So how to determine if you want to look at probate, you ask yourself, did they die in this county? You want to search for them in probate then, because they might have, land settlement, property settlement, something that you would find in probate. If you're not looking in Clark County, you'll want to start with probate courthouse, find out where that is to see if someone has a probate record. So the things that you can find in probate are wills. They're included in the estate packets, which I have pictured here on the right as a sample little estate packet. But they're also listed in separate will books, which we have some of the will books. Well, no, actually, I think all of the will books at probate, Flossie?
I think they're in the basement. Yeah.
Yeah.
But what I've done, I tell people when they see that index to go over to the column that says wills and see if it says there's a will, to write down the number and the page number of that will book, because I have found where the will is supposed to be in that packet, but it's not there, but it is in the will book.
Okay. You'll also find if they didn't have a will, you'll have an estate settlement. So like that means if they died without a will, it's called the intestate. They died without a will. The record is listed. You'll know that they didn't have a will because they'll have an administrator on their estate instead of an executor. If they have an executor, they're executing the will. That's how I remember it. If they have an administrator, you know that there's not a will. So a lot of times researchers will ask us for they're trying to find a will next of kin listed in it. We know that if they died without a will, you might not necessarily find exactly who their next of kin are, but it might be listed in their estate settlement.
Under the children and their guardianship, if there's any land or any money, they have to have a guardian so that the child is not governed by the county and not supported by the county.
So that's another section that you'll find under probate is the guardianship cases. And in that case, like if there's multiple children, it's usually listed by the eldest child. So you might need to find that information out if you want to know what child to look under, or you could just look under last name. Sometimes like an I know index, if you're not sure the first name of the child, you have to just go through all of them and all of the names and see if you can find somebody that has the right last name. But so the multiple children would all be listed together. Even if the mother is alive, they will still be a guardianship case to help settle everything.
The mommy didn't spend the money on herself.
Yeah, they want to make sure. Yeah, very, very untrusting of the women. And another way that guardianship cases can be listed is a lunacy case. That's the only time that we still have lunacy cases that make it through in our records. Otherwise, they're pulled out. They're not considered part of the public record.
It could be Alzheimer's. It could be syphilis even, but they don't tell you what we don't have.
But if a case got listed as a guardianship and it's still an adult, sometimes those slip through. But for the most part, if you look up in the index and you see that it's lunacy, I can pretty much guarantee you that if we go and try to pull that case, it's not going to be there because those were pulled out. I want to back up real quick to the death records. Yolanda mentioned in the chat that you can photograph any Ohio death certificate from 1908 to the present for free at the county health department without having to pay for it. So you can document the record without having to pay. So that is very good to know. Thank you. So you can, going back to the probate records, you can find them at probate. They have on microfilm from the 1990s. and through the present. At the Heritage Center, you can find most of them are located off-site. In March, we moved about 500 boxes off-site and reorganized them. So we can still access them. It just might take us a little bit longer to get that file pulled for you. What we've been doing is pulling them one week and sending them to you and then refiling them the following week because we have to go off-site to get it. But we have the indexes still on the third floor in the archives that you can search for the case number and see what you need to get.
Natalie, can I mention these books that I hand copied from?
Yeah.
I did this one.
Those are the deaths.
Those are deaths that I abstracted from the original newspapers, those years. Can you read that?
Yeah, so those were years that were not covered by the death records.
From the newspapers. And
Yeah.
Here's another one. I did this one. Those were an abstract. This is the actual.
You fully copied
everything it said on those deaths.
Yeah. So that was a lot.
And then later I did them for 1900. From January 1 to April 30th, 1900, September 8 to December 31, 1900.
So those were covering the years that we didn't previously, no one would have had access to without having to, well, do what you do, go through everything. So you made it a lot more accessible for people. Land and property records, if you're looking for those, at the Heritage Center, we have the index books only, and then those are for land only. So like we don't have deeds for houses like Patty told me that they have at the library. And our land deeds books only cover from 1811 to about 1870. They tell you where the land was bought and sold and the names of the sellers, which were the grantors, and the buyers, which are the grantees. So you can copy down that information. We have a little spreadsheet that you can copy down from the book into and take that information over to the library to look it up, or you could start at the library because they have the index and the deeds themselves. But you know, you figure if you're already here at the Heritage Center, you can at least take that information over with you. And then if you take the volume and page number over to the library, that's where you can look up the actual deeds that will tell you more information about specifically where the land was and describe it. They also have the property deeds over at the library. At the recorder's office, they have the land and property deeds. So the recorder's office is located in the A.B. Graham building on Limestone and Columbia, the building that has the four-leaf clover in front of it.
Those land deeds then also tell the name of the children of the man. If a man died and there was no will, somebody had to pay tax on that land. And it'll be sold by the sheriff, and you'll get the names of some of the children and the people that inherited because of the land sold by the sheriff.
So some online resources that you can get to deeds from 1988 to the present. You can get Clark County deeds. And actually the link that I have here goes to the whole state of Ohio, and it will take you to the recorder's offices for every county. So you can check through other counties as well. The auditor's office has information about property taxes, and the past few owners are listed online. And then if you're on the auditor's page, if you see, and you're looking up a property, if you see 1900 as the build date for your property, ignore that. It's probably not right. That's kind of the default date, which means that it may be older. They just weren't sure exactly how old it is. So I usually tell people if it says 1900, don't believe it at all. And then I have a screenshot here on the next page with our building as an example. So like if you go to the site and you type in basic search, it pops up a search box that you can put in the address that you're looking for. And it, at least on the Clark County site, it auto completes. So you can start typing in the address number that you're looking for, and it'll start dropping down choices that line up to that. So you usually need to pay attention to what's happening in the drop down and then select it as you're typing in the address. So like for where we're at 117 South Fountain, and it's Board of Commissioners, which I think is different now. I think we now outright own our building, but I don't know if it's gone through on the auditor's page yet. And then you can click out on the map. So I was going to see if I could try and do one from here, but I think if I do this, I'll have to switch my screen share. But once you're on the map, you can zoom out on this view on the Clark County site. I've checked a couple other sites too. They're all slightly different how they handle it, but you can zoom out and click on different houses that are on the map, and it'll bring up a report. So if you click on view report on the screenshot here, it brings up the whole information about that property, like most recent taxes paid, when it was built, if there's been any additions made on it, like if a garage was built, or we used it the other day to find out that the house actually still showed up on the auditor's page, but from Google Maps, we knew that the house was gone, it had been torn down. So when we went to the auditor's site, we went under like recent additions, and it actually had the demolition permit hold. So we knew that the demolition permit had been pulled in 2010. So we knew that it was gone sometime around that time. But it still was showing up on the auditor's page for whatever reason. Cheryl says that the Bureau of Land Management is a great resource for original settlers to the area. Oh, I forgot about that one. That's a site that you can go to, BLM. I think, well, just Google Bureau of Land Management. And I think you can sort by the original land deeds on there. Like if you click on Clark County, you can search within there for people. I'd completely forgotten about that one. I haven't been to that site in a long time, but that's a good source for early land deeds in the area that you're looking for. Speaking of land, another great source are atlases and maps. We have them in the Heritage Center library back by the microfilm readers. There's a little stand that has all of the different atlases on it. They have them over at the Clark County Public Library, and you can access them at the engineer's office. The atlases that exist for Clark County are only a small amount of years. There's an 1871, there's an 1875 one, which is my favorite because it has sketches and it's really great. And it's got like sketches of people, sketches of buildings. It's a really great one. As far as having extra information in it. There's an 1882 one that is just for the city of Springfield. And that's really neat because it shows you actual layouts of the streets and the buildings on them. We were looking for that for the other day. Somebody came in looking for the Spangenberger house. And we pulled out the 1882 atlas and found it was a a bottling company. And we found that on there, and it showed exactly where all of the outbuildings and everything were on that. The 1894 one is another great one that has images.
Our Genealogy Society sells those.
And you guys sell a reproduction paperback copy of that that people can.
Also have a hardbound.
Oh, you have a hardbound that you have too? Okay.
Yeah, we have a few of those and paper.
So some notable maps, when you walk into the Heritage Center on the 3rd floor, right off the elevator is the 1855 map of Clark County, which is the oldest one that we have access to. I think there's older ones that the engineer's office has, but this is really great because it shows each square of it, shows the land ownership in the different sections across the county. It's kind of messy when you get down to like Madison and Harmony, the whole right side, the whole eastern side of the county of Madison, Harmony, and Pleasant Township is part of the Virginia military district. So the way that land is cut up is nonsensical to me. I don't understand why it is the way it is.
Numbers, and you don't.
Yeah, it's random numbers, and it's messy and it's non-symmetrical. Whereas in the other counties, everybody has a nice little square and they're numbered, and you can say, I own this section of land. I'm a section 3. This is the township. So, township 4, range 9, section 5. You know exactly where it is. When you get over to this right part of the county, the eastern part of the county, they're just all over the place. It's very, very messy as far as making it easier to find that. But we have indexed that to make it a little bit easier to say, if you're looking for a family name, you still have to stare at the map for a really long time to find the numbers if you're over in that side. But that's how the Virginia Military District lands are divided in a nonsensical way, as far as I'm concerned. Sanborn maps are a really great resource. The 1882 Springfield Atlas is more of a Sanborn map kind of style. It tells you the makeup of the building, like if it's a brick or wooden or metal structure, it has a little key that tells you what the building is made of, and it has the exact layout. My issue with our physical Sanborn maps in the building, they're huge, really heavy. You can bring them over to the table and flip them open, and they cover from 1928 to about 1956. But my biggest issue is, whenever they made updates, they would just draw the new part of the map and glue it over the old part of the map. So if you want to know what used to be in that exact section, it's glued underneath, so you can't see it. So you can tell that something else was under there, but we cannot see it on those physical maps, because that was how they updated them, which is great and efficient. If you work in, that department and you're updating your maps, you don't have to buy a whole new book. You can just glue it over top. But for people that are doing research later, we really wish you hadn't done that. So you can't. The good news is that they have Sanborn maps online for most of Ohio. I think they have every county. I know that you used to be able to access it a different way through the Clark County Public Library's website, but I'm not sure if that one's active anymore. A current site that you can go to is run through Kent State University, and the link is on the slide here. And the Sanborn maps were to assess fire insurance. So you knew like what the buildings were made of, and it had detailed information for like the fire department to know about, what are they dealing with, what kind of buildings are over there. But if you go to that website, you can click through every year and you can see those changes where we have them glued over top. You can actually go back to those older maps and see before the changes were made. Cheryl says in the comments that if you find early tax information for your ancestor, it will list the section, township, and range on the map, that you can cross-reference with those older maps to see where your ancestor lived, even if you can't find the deed. So I know we have some resources for finding early tax information. We have tax duplicates, but I know they're very difficult to search. I don't know, Cheryl, where you have encountered them, if there's like an easier way, or if you've seen other places that have their tax records separately. We have great big books that are difficult to search. But that is a way that you can figure out a section, what section of the map the person was on. Something that I use absolutely every day is Google Maps. It's my favorite site for searching to see what used to be in a place. Bing Maps is great too, but Google is better as far as finding stuff. But another really great site is Instant Street View. If you go to Instant Street View and just type in the address you're looking at, it drops you right in front of the building. But Google Maps I like because you can pick up the little person in the corner on the map. There's a little yellow person, and if you drag them over to the map and drop them, if it shows blue on the street, you know that you can drop your person there, and it will take you down to the street view, so you can stand in front of a building and look directly at it to see what's there now, or what was there. I use it all the time because I send a then and now picture to the paper every week, and I always go to Google Maps first to see what the now picture is going to be before I send it off to Bill at the paper to take the now picture. Cheryl said that she found the tax information at Wright State's archives on microfilm, and it was a very painful process. So apparently there's not an easy way to search those tax records. They must be painful in every county, but it is a source that exists. I always look at it as a last resort kind of source because I know they're so difficult to find information in. Rural directories, lots of cities have them. If you have ancestry.com, a lot of them are on ancestry.com. Springfield has city directories starting in 1852. It's a little reproduction, tiny copy, all the way up through pretty much the present. We get them from the municipal court whenever they're done with it, because my husband works there, and they still get the actual directories over there. So when they're done with that year, we've been getting the most recent years from them to add to our collection. So people can search, I think, through at least maybe 2020 right now is what we have available. I've never even priced them. I don't even know where they come from anymore. But I know that you don't get as much good information from the directories currently as you used to. Great things that you can oh, so there's the city directories, which we have way more city directories. There's a small section of rural directories in the bottom corner, where we have the directory stored in the library. And those, I don't know if you're doing county research, you'll find a lot of rural Route 3 or rural Route 2. I found that less than helpful because I'm not sure what street that is now, but I know there's ways to find that information out. I know I'm not as helpful for people looking through the rural directories. But I find that people that come from the county, they understand them a bit better than me. My city brain can't quite wrap my brain around searching those ones. But we do have them much less years. We jump around. We have a few in the early 1900s, a few from the 20s, and a few from the 40s. There's a lot of gaps there as far as the rural directories go. And as far as I know, none of those are available online for Clark County. Just the Springfield city directories. We have them at the Heritage Center. The Clark County Public Library has them as well, over in their research section, so they're non-circulating. And then Ancestry has basically the 1870s through 1960 for Springfield. So it saves me a lot of time. I sit down and search Ancestry, and then once I get to 1960, I'll actually walk over to the shelf and look at them. So I'm very happy that they have all of those years online now, because I used to sit on the floor and spread them all out to look at tons of copies, and now I don't have to do that for so many years. But the great things you can learn from directories, they can tell you where a person lived. After the 1890s, it can tell you their spouse's name. So the woman's name is going to be listed in parentheses next to the man's. A woman will be listed alone only if she's over 18 and unmarried, or if she's widowed, and then she'll be listed as widow of John or whatever in parentheses next to her name. The great thing about the directories is that it lists their occupation. It doesn't do this in later years. This is, current. You can very rarely find an occupation listed, but it'll have where they worked. Sometimes their specific role at that business, like if they're a foreman at a local factory, it will say that. And if they own the business, if it's part of a business, it will tell you the address of a business. If it's a person that's a business owner, it'll say their business was here, they resided here. So they'll have two addresses listed on the line. And the really neat thing about it is that you can do a reverse address lookup starting in 1915. So you can go to the 1915 directory, look up the address for a street, and trace it all the way up through the present to see who lived there. So that's a great way to figure out, when a business moved, how many different locations it was at. You can look it up through the reverse lookup. A problem that we run into here doing Springfield research is that they changed the street numbers between 1908 and 1909. So if you're looking at a house that somebody lived at, you have to figure out what the street number changed to. And again, that seems to be nonsensical how they decided to change the numbers. It's not like they added 100 to it or they added 300 to it.
Yeah, the house number.
The house number is changed, yeah. And they also changed the street numbers. I mean, not the street numbers, they changed the street names at one point too. Yeah, so there's a little booklet. I think Flossie, you photocopied it and put it in the book then. Of the city directory of the street name. So it tells you this street. So at that time it will tell you this street became this street. Sometimes that causes confusion too if your street name is no longer the same one either. County histories are another really great resource. Lots of counties have beers histories. I'm not sure. I think that the beers publisher did it for, I don't know if it's just Ohio ones, but I'm only familiar with Ohio ones because we have copies of like Greene County and Madison County and other counties around us that are published by beers. But this slide here has a lot of detail on it because it is the direct link to, we have an index in the library that is a very detailed surname index, but I also linked the direct copy of the book if you want to look at it online. So like Beer's 1881 history, you can find it on Google and search it. I don't know, I've not always had great luck at finding the entire text, but because they seem to go up and down, that they're not always fully accessible. But there's an 1890 history, a 1902 one, and a 1908. So you notice there's not really any more modern histories. There's a 1923 Prince history that I think I forgot to list on here. And then the most recent history after that would be the 1981 history of Springfield and Clark County by Dr. Kinnison, who was the president of Wittenberg for a long time and long-time board president here at the Historical Society. So that one's from 1981. And then we put out a book in 2001 that goes with the museum. So there's a lot of gaps in there as far as histories go. And so there hasn't been like a comprehensive county history written in a very, very long time. But a lot of those those biographical ones, like portrait and biographical record and the biographical record, your biography was pay to play. Basically, you had to pay to have your biography in there for some of them. So in that case, you know, there's a lot of stories and a lot of people that are missing because they couldn't afford to have their story in there. So it's definitely not a comprehensive history or anything like that. But they're really great resources for finding out like the history of schools in the area. Like it will tell you, you know, the first school opened in this year, or, you know, these were the teachers there. It'll give you a lot of like military history, like these people served in the Civil War in this area of the county. So there's a lot of good information there. And these are also all available at the Clark County Public Library, copies of each of these books. Burial records, that's something that the Genealogical Society sells as well, is bound copies of the cemetery listings. And these are read cemetery listings. And basically I explain that they physically went to the cemetery and walked it to get these records. These are not necessarily like the sextant's records. They didn't go to an office to get this information. This is physically what they could see at that time. So I tell people, depending on when your cemetery was read, it has a date in there. You know, this was read in 1974 by Ann Benston, and Marty Castle did a lot of those readings in the 70s. The stones they were looking at in the 70s might not be findable or readable today if you go to that same cemetery. And Bob and Flossie, I know you guys have done work specifically to help clean up some of the cemeteries in town, right?
Yeah.
Well, I know there was one, I can't remember which one it was out in the county that you guys have done a lot of work in.
Guard, we spent 2 summers cleaning it out.
Rector Guard.
It doesn't back up the way it was.
Yeah. I know it takes a lot of upkeep for those, and there's not, and part of the problem is depending on where they're located, sometimes people don't know who's supposed to be keeping them up, or there's not anybody left that's keeping them up, or some of them are on private property. So, you know, it's not always easy to get that information or get back to that. There's the way that those books are listed, they're listed by township. So you have to know which township you're looking in. And there's a great Ohio Cemeteries book, which I think, Yolanda, you sent us a copy of the up-to-date one. And for finding Ohio cemeteries. So if you're not sure where your cemetery is, like sometimes people come in and they say, I know they're buried in this cemetery. I have no idea where that is in the county. You can go to the Ohio Cemeteries book, look it up under Clark County, and it will tell you which township to go to. And then we can, you know, go to one of those booklets for it. Those booklets are already also cross-referenced with some handwritten index cards that are located in a little cabinet over in the library. And I've never figured out the rhyme or reason behind those either, because they are not a one-to-one correspondence with the ones in the books. I don't think they definitely weren't all copied out of those books directly, because they don't completely match. But if someone comes in and says, I know my person died in Clark County, but I have absolutely no idea where, I usually start in those cards, because the cards are alphabetical. So then we can just go there and see if they pop up on a card. Yolanda said that the Ohio Cemeteries book is available. Oh, online. You can look at it online now at ogs.org under their cemetery research section. Thank you. That's very good to know that you can look up the book there. Ferncliff records, Flossie mentioned earlier, are in the genealogy office, up through 1990, but you did say that there's a few later years there. Those are different than what you can find if you go to Ferncliff's own website, because the ones on the cards actually give you cause of death for the people for the most part. And those are kind of neat because then you can pull up a whole card or a whole sheet, and you can see who all is in the same plots.
You can see who are all in the same plot.
Yeah. We also have the Greenmont Cemetery records. Find a Grave is a great online source. It includes cemetery listings. It has biographies. Sometimes there are obituaries attached. It has pictures and then photos of the graves. And there's volunteers that will, work with Find a Grave that will, if you can contact people, they'll volunteer to go take a picture of your ancestor's grave that you're looking for. So that's a really great source for finding things. And then the clipped obituaries are on index cards in a catalog file up in the library.
Lane Roller is still doing those. She's
Yeah.
doing them, and she's pasting them on the card. She brings them in and Bob files them.
Yes. So those are kept up to the present. They're clipped. Elaine keeps them clipped, keeps them up to date with any obituaries that come out throughout the weeks and puts them on cards. So I don't know if we've ever figured out how far they go back, the cards, but I know that Flossie, whenever you or Bob find,
I think the 1970s, neither the Genealogy Society nor the Historical Society kept them.
but there's
the whole index right around the 1970s. We don't have obituary cards.
But there's some really old ones in there from the 30s and 40s and things like and I know whenever you find older ones, you'll put them on cards and add them in there.
As we go through the newspaper, you can pick out maybe if it's a very famous person or a notary. We can pull that one out and put it in the file.
Yeah.
If it's too long, they can put them in the surname file.
Right.
Oh, and another online source where you can search is the Rutherford B. Hayes Obituary Index. That's the Hayes home. President Hayes is home in, I think, Fremont. They actually maintain the obituary index for the whole state.
They just give you the date that's in the newspaper.
Yeah.
Not the obituary.
No, they don't have the obituary itself, but they can tell you it exists. So it does include Springfield papers from the 1880s, pretty much through the present. Actually, I think it might stop in maybe about 10 years ago that they're in there. But you can request them through the Clark County Public Library. They can send you copies. We can send you copies. But that's a good source to know if the obituary exists at all, because then we can either go to our papers, or I go to newspapers.com a lot now, which is a whole other slide. This is our newspaper slide. You can find the microfilm at the Clark County Public Library. For there they have, I don't know if it's still 15 cents a page to print, but it was last time I had checked a while back. But you can also scan directly to a memory stick if you're on one of those machines that allows you to do the digital copy. They have an online newspaper index that they maintain themselves that I have linked here. We also have microfilm at the Heritage Center. We have 1860 through 2021. We have the Daily News and the Sun. I think at the library they have just the news. We also have original bound newspapers, great big books. Dave McWhorter has been through just about every single one. He's with the New Carlisle Historical Society. Those start in 1829 and go up through the 1970s. We also have some from the 2000s, from the last batch of stuff that we got from the New Sun when they were closing, moving out of their building 10 years ago. We have the New Sun collection. When they moved out of the building, they gave us all of their clippings files, subject files, people files, negatives, negative cards. And we've spent the last 10 years creating indexes of all of that stuff to make it searchable. So we have all of their original stuff. And then Flossie mentioned some of the newspaper abstracts she did, but Ann Benston did newspaper abstracts from the 1820s through the, I think, 1840s, where she went in and abstracted all sorts of information, births, deaths, marriages, probate records, that kind of stuff on people, and has So we have a whole series of those little booklets that you can go through and see if your family name appears in the paper. And then we already mentioned the clipped obituaries. Newspapers.com is a subscription service, but we got it about 6 months ago or so, and I'd say it is the single most important research device that I have ever used. They didn't used to have Springfield papers on newspapers.com, so we didn't bother getting a membership before. But about a year ago, I talked to Mike Cooper, who used to work for the News Sun, and he said, you know, they have the papers online now. And I said, I did not. And now I literally use it every single day. There was stuff that people used to write us in about, you know, looking for research saying, you know I appeared in the newspaper in 1996. I don't know what month. I have no idea. I can't narrow it down. Now I can type in their name and go directly to whatever they were looking for. I helped, you know, Patty had something that Patty Ark, who's on this call, she had told me she was wanting me to look for an article about her aunt, and I had written it down, and it was a little note on my desk, like if we ever had time to go through the paper, many years of the paper, that maybe we could run across this story. And then when we got newspapers.com, I just typed in her aunt's name and found the article within like a minute and a half. So it's a really, really wonderful resource for searching newspapers. And since it has Springfield papers all the way up through the present, it's invaluable as far as I'm concerned. Library of Congress is free. It's has a lot of newspapers from around the country, but unfortunately it only has about 3 years from the city of Springfield, so it's not as helpful to us as a free resource. And the years that it has are like the 1800s or mid 1800s. So Kevin Rose was really excited about the years they had, because it had a lot of stuff he needed about architecture and building, because that's his thing, is looking up Springfield architecture. But those 3 years are not that helpful for everybody. So hopefully someday they'll have more free on their website. Family histories, we keep published genealogies and research binders in the research library. There's a whole section that's just alphabetical by surname, so you can look up and see if anybody's done research on your family name. We get a lot of, you know, people said, hey, I did all of my family research, here's a copy of my binder, and you know, we'll put it over there with that other people can use their research. We keep family surname files back in the archives. There's a general reference section that's just A to Z. You can look up names in there. And then there's certain genealogists that did a lot of research, like Ann Benston, Snodgrass Benston. She has a whole collection to herself. Mary Scarden was a genealogical research, and Sylvia Olson. So all of their collections have lots of different surnames files back in them. And Flossie mentioned that, you know, they keep in the Genealogical Society their research files. So any research that Flossie has done for researchers, she keeps a copy of that and has it under the surname. And then Elaine Roller helps to cross-reference any other names that appear in there, so that you can look all of that up. And you can kind of, instead of reinventing the wheel every time, you can go see what research somebody has already done on that name. And then in our archives, we also have photos of identified men, women, children, and families that you can look at. I think Barbara Matthews is on here. She's been scanning all of our photos just a little bit at a time, 3 times a week. She's currently working on our identified families collection right now. And I think it's driving her insane, because, you know, people identify your photos while you can. Go find out who exactly is in that photo. So we have a lot of folders that just say, these all belong to the Smith family. And then when you flip them over, not a single other person is identified in those pictures. So it's very helpful to know who's in them. I added this slide in here about just specifically searching our site, but this site search works for any website if you want to do a deep search of a single website. The way you do that is you go to Google, you type in site : whatever site you're looking at, and then you leave a space and then put in whatever keyword you're looking for. So the example I used on our website is, we're searching site heritagecenter.us, which is our collections page, and then space, and I'm searching for Kiefer. So if you're familiar with General Kiefer, he comes up in a lot of collections. So we had 108 results. We know that he has his own collection because he was a general. So this gives you a quick show of all the different places where he appears. So this will tell you, like, if you come in and you're looking for the Smith family, I can type in Smith and it'll tell me every single place in the archives that I need to go pull a file or a box or any information on your family name that you're looking for. But again, the site search, this tool of searching a site works with any website. But I use it primarily to search our site because I don't love our search bar. We have a search bar. It just isn't as easy to use as me doing a site search like this. General tips and tricks if you have run into roadblocks is that remember that people's names change all the time. They might sometimes go by their middle name. They might go by their initials. They might go by their first initial. They might go by, you know, RL. They might go by R. You need to know what the nicknames are for different names, like Polly is a nickname for Mary. I don't know why. I think I do remember seeing somewhere an explanation for that. But I know I went to a genealogical conference years ago and I bought a little book that says these are what names are nicknames for. And I've tried to like memorize some of the most common ones to figure out, okay, you know, so this person is Polly in the 1920 census, but she's Mary in the 1930 census. It is the same person, they're the same name, but they just are going by a nickname in this one. So you be aware of nicknames and, you know, different initials. Throw out any spelling that you may know. And when you find any variations in spelling, write them down and keep track of them. So, you know, like if you're searching for your family name, search all the different variations. And they can vary across city directories, census records, birth records, theft records, everything. You know, we found it all that, you know, the person is not consistent. Sometimes it's based on somebody didn't know how to spell their name, like the census taker had no idea. I know that my own grandparents, when the 1940 census came out, you know, everybody was really excited because they would finally see people, either see themselves or see people they knew. Both my grandparents on both sides both had their names transcribed wrong. So luckily you can submit corrections so you can tell people this is what their name actually was, because the census taker wrote their name down wrong. So you know, that's something that you can fix. If you go on Ancestry, you can submit a correction to those online indexes, and it helps future researchers know that they found the right name. So if you're doing an online search, like on Family Search or Ancestry.com, they usually have a little box that you can check that says exact match. You don't want to check that box because it'll throw out all of those names that sound the same or variations of spelling. So I find that it's a lot more helpful to not have that box checked. And then a lot of those spelling errors are due to transcription errors because I know that at least, you know, the 1940 census, they asked for people to help. The public was helping transcribe that. You could go into Ancestry.com and transcribe a few pages. But if someone couldn't read the writing, you know, they would transcribe whatever they thought it was. So you'll see like on Ancestry in parentheses, a correction that somebody has submitted. So, you know, they take those into account and then those go into the search function to be able to pick up those name variations.
Natalie?
Yeah.
We got 2 or 3 things. If you're looking for someone around 1818, when Ohio and Clark County came about, you might try Madison County, Champaign County, Miami County, or Greene County, because sometimes those records were not combined, and there's, you know, down around Enon is a good example. Enon was Greene County up until 1818. And I know I had an instance right after we moved into the Heritage Center. And there was a woman came in from Yellow Springs, I think it was. And she was looking for the will of Owen Davis. Owen Davis was a very early settler, owned a lot of mills, and I just happened to know that we had it. So I said, we have that will. Well, why do you have it? And I said, well, because we do, you know. And I just happened, and I always remembered it's number one will.
It's the very first one. Yeah.
Right. The very first one. And oh, she couldn't understand that.
Wasn't Clifton or something he's supposed to have lived?
It
Yeah.
was in Greene County, then it became Clark County.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
know,
So we actually have an Ohio lands little booklet that's in the the
Right.
library that explains how the counties in Ohio developed. So like if you look at the 1816 map of Ohio, we're still not a county yet, but you can see like it's, you know, Champaign is there. And you can see that how they start cutting the counties out. So we were cut out of Champaign, Madison, Greene, and Montgomery counties. So all of those early records could show up in there. Another place you can look is Cincinnati, because they had the main land office.
right.
So some of our land records end up down there as well. So
When we did the research on the old Columbia Street Cemetery, all those land records, we had to contact them in Cincinnati land office. And since they were 1799, 1801, why, you know, they had all those records down there. And we were fortunate to get them.
Which became Clark County.
Yes. Another thing, I think we might have overlooked. My main job now is I'm on the microfilm and I'm going through newspapers, no particular order, whatever comes into my brain, and said, maybe I'll look at 1931 today. So anything that I find in that newspaper that I think that might be
interesting.
Of
Yeah.
interest.
Yeah, somebody, and Natalie, thanks to her, you know, she has made this an alphabetical file in the computer. And if somebody walks in that door and says, what do you have on Horace McGillicuddy? And she gets in her file, Horace McGillicuddy, and she can tell you right where it is and what the article's about. So it's that's more modern, you know.
Mhm.
Sometimes I've been up into, I don't know, 1985 or 90, and that's pretty new for genealogy.
Yeah. Yeah, so Bob writes down anything that he thinks might be interesting in this spreadsheet. We type up the spreadsheet and then we put that on our website periodically, updates. So like, you know, Bob's kept track of, like, you know, grand openings of different places in town, or anything of interest that we think. So like if there's a big biography of a person, he'll write that down. So if someone later comes in and is looking for that person, we know, you know, that it ran in the paper. So that's been very helpful to, even though, you know, newspapers.com, and there are some indexes out there, we don't know what to look for in the index. You know, he's writing down just things he thinks would be interesting to people.
Those of you that come in for obituaries, we're now pushing 40,000 obituaries, and that's a lot of cards. But we, you know, if you had ancestors in Clark County, chances are we're going to have something about it, or something about it.
Yeah.
Right. So don't be bashful. Come in.
Yeah. Some other online tips, like especially Ancestry or Family Search. If you use the general search function, fill in whatever you know about a person. I always start with the general search. So I say, you know, I know this person's first name and last name. I know their husband's name. I know their father's last name at least. And I know that they lived in this county. So I fill in, they have all these fields you can drop down. As much information as you can fill in, you're more likely to find the person that you're looking for. And then what I love about Ancestry is that once you get a search, like if I do that general search, it will bring up every single record that they think is connected to that person. And then I just sit there and I'll open up a tab for each record and keep my main search open, and then just look through, like, okay, I'm looking at their census record, I'm looking at their birth record, I'm looking at, and they have it. Since so many people have done research and connected them themselves, you're kind of like, it's a group community effort of other people connecting those records together. But you need to keep in mind that people don't always connect the right record to the right person. You know, if someone has the same name, they might not pay attention to the fact that it's definitely not the right person because they were born in a different time. So I've noticed sometimes that the wrong record is connected to the person. And you can also submit a little note like that says, this isn't the right person, disconnect this, so that other people don't accidentally get that wrong information. I wanted to include a few slides about, you know, if you're doing your family research, there's fun ways that you can share it with your family. You know, you can put together a booklet. I know that we've got some great books that people have self-published that are in our family history section, where they've had, you know, there's this beautiful, the Searle family, that's very colorful. Every generation is color coded. It's color pictures. It's the most beautiful family history I've ever seen. But this is a fun idea. You can make family ancestor trading cards, and you can put all of their information on there that you know about them. This is a great way, just, you know, family heirlooms. If you've got stuff in your family and you want people to know why it's important, who it belonged to. This person made little cards for each thing. It has, you know, what's the item, when was it made, who did it belong to, so that people have those stories, because that stuff doesn't always get passed along with the family history. Some fun projects you can do with, you know, family recipes you can have made into a book or bind them together. This is, I know that Marguerite Brinkman, one of our volunteers, they made a cookie book with all of their family cookie recipes that they get together to make every year for the holidays. They made a little book that everybody got a copy of. You could take family photos, and I say, if you take family photos, make copies. Do not use the originals. Make a photocopy. Or scan it, make a photocopy, and then make your fun thing out of that. Do not cut up originals or do this stuff with the original ones. But you can make ornaments. So you can make, you know, this person made a little family quilt. This is family recipes on a tea towel sent off to a company. So there's lots of different things that you can do with your family photos and family history to keep it together. And I wanted to throw in, since, you know, we collect and preserve the county history, wanted to give you guys some resources for if you want to store your own stuff. You can buy single boxes and folder in, you know, small amounts of folders. Well, you can buy like a box of 100. I don't think you can get any less than that, but you can buy from like Hollinger, Metal Edge, or Gaylord, which is where we get our supplies from to have acid-free stuff to store your family papers in. But you want to make sure it's stuff says that it's acid-free. And then just general other online sources for information. There's lots of, there's the local history genealogy page at the Clark County Public Library has a whole bunch of different indexes and resources that you can click through online to look at. And then if you need help, we can always help you here if you come in person, or if you write to us. The Clark County Information Desk at the library is very helpful. Or I encourage you to go meet and join the Clark County chapter of the Ohio Genealogical Society. You have a meeting coming up this week, right? This Saturday.
Our speaker is the one who's the main person that's been pushing the new cemetery.
Tom Loftus.
Tom Loftus. Oh, great! So you can learn you can learn about the Columbia Street Cemetery project, right, or Springfield Burying Ground is what it's called.
Right.
So they meet at the Park Branch Library on Bechtel. Oh, I didn't put the time. 11 o'clock. Is that right?
11:30.
11:30.
11:30. On Bechtel.
Anyone can attend if you want to go check it out. It's $12 individual, or $15 for a family to join. And you guys meet every month except for July and August and December.
Right.
You can also find a professional genealogist for hire at a website if you want to, you know, hire someone who can like travel around. We generally stay within our, like, I stay in the building. I will only look for stuff in our building. Flossie will run over to the library to get deeds periodically, and I know you've gone to the courthouse, but not in a long time. But I just do stuff within our own building. And then I'll send people to go to other places if they need to look other places in the county. But I'm always happy to help or figure out where you need to go, but I don't leave the building to get stuff. And then I know that I've, like Yolanda, I don't know if you're still on here. I think she's a certified genealogist. I know that I've worked with a few, there's a lot that you have to go through, a lot of hoops to prove that you know what you're doing. And I know that I've worked with several people that have come back that are working on becoming a certified genealogist, and they have to do certain research in different areas Yolanda says not certified yet, but I know that there's a lot that you have to do to become a certified genealogist. And I say that I help people with research all the time. I have, aside from just little bits on Ancestry, I've never personally done my own family history research. That's my grandma and my dad's thing on our different sides of the family. So I've helped to like aggregate their information together, but I have not had the opportunity to do my own searches for my own family history. So someday maybe I'll get to do that. But last slide here, I just have my email. If you wanted to, oops, let me go back. If you wanted to email me to ask any questions, and Flossie's email, she can do research for you for stuff. But we're by appointment, I prefer. But we are open 10 to 4. I'm there till 5. You can stay till 5 most days, and then Saturdays 10 to 3. But always happy to help.
Okay.
Do you guys have anything to add?
Well, I think he wanted to put Genealogy Society on that part, maybe. I don't know.
Okay.
No,
Is there another
in the column?
Mm-hmm.
Research or put,
But
something.
it's up there. Contact us. That's what she's got. That's what it is.
Okay.
Okay, yeah.
It's okay.
And I'm looking at the chat to see if there's any other questions we missed. There is one about they have said that they have ancestors in Bethel Township in Clark County, and right across the county line there's a Bethel Township in Miami County. And it was asking if that's typical of townships. I know that there's repeated township names all across states, but I know that it does make it a little bit confusing for research especially when they're right next to each other like that. So I don't know how much of that lines up that they're on the line like that. But I know that I've encountered that quite a bit. Pam Griffin asked about burial records of blacks during the early 1900s or late 1800s. Are there records? I know that in general, those would appear if they're buried in those, they should be in the burial records for those cemeteries if they are in fact buried in those cemeteries. But I do know that I've talked to one of our volunteers, Candy Highmiller. She's now a librarian at one of the schools in town. She was doing research just on general black burials in that time frame, that they were not always recorded. And that was something that was new to me. I didn't really know that much more. I just assumed that if they were buried here, that they would show up in the cemetery records. And she said that was not always the case. I don't know more information about that. Specifically the ones that she says are not necessarily there. But I think there might be more information out there if you were to look that up. Somebody asked about Castle. I mentioned Marty Castle. She's spelled Castle, but she's done a lot of local genealogy in the area.
She's in Tip City in a nursing home.
And Yolanda, I saw you said you just were here the other day, so we missed you. So yeah, I'll have to stop by next time you're here. If you guys have any, I'll stop sharing. If you guys have any other questions that you want to ask specifically, like I said, I'm always up. We're always up for the challenge of figuring out where to find something. if someone's looking for records. One that always stumps me is when people are in the DAR or looking to get into the DAR, and they need to find a death record for a birth or death record for their person, and it's, you know, from a time before those exist. For the state of Ohio. And I say, I don't know how to help you. If they need a death record and they say that's what they need, they need to give you some leeway to like let you give another record. So we try and find other ways to prove those things. Like, you know, sometimes we just have to get creative to figure out where else this information might be in those early time frames.
It looks like the chats are building up.
Yeah. I think we've covered all the questions in there. But yeah, we'll have this recording up, and then I can share this. I'll figure out somewhere that maybe I can upload the slides that people can look at them too, and that they'll be clickable. I know that I can upload the PDFs somewhere, but I'm not sure if the links will be clickable. So I'll have to ask Jane about that. We'll figure out a way to get them up. So thank you, Bob and Flossie, for being here. You guys, Flossie, you taught me everything I know about how to do everything.
You went way beyond me, Natalie.
So I mean,
do the internet like that.
I know when I started, I had no idea how to read the deed books. Like, all of that cursive was absolutely foreign to me. It didn't look like English at all. So so I know that that's something you helped me with, to be able to decipher the handwriting, especially in those books. So I thank you for everything you've taught me how to do over the years, because we've got a lot of really great resources, and everything that we have is because of all of the amazing volunteers we have that have made it accessible, you know, whether hand copying it or typing it up, or, you know, so much work has gone into making it accessible for people that are looking for this stuff. Cheryl, there is a new question about the 110th OVI. There's a book specifically about the 110th connected to General Kiefer, but there is actually a box in the archives about the 110th OVI, and it's a research collection. So you can email me at nfritz@heritagecenter.us, and I can see if there's any specific information in that box, maybe related to the person you're looking for. Or we have general information about that particular regiment, which was the one primarily from Clark County. So. Right. We have a lot of great information. So thank you guys for coming today. Our next virtual program is going to be next month at the end, towards the end of June, on June 21st. And it's going to be about amateur radio, ham radio. We'll be working with Kevin Campman and people from the, I can't remember their official name, but the ham radio group that's here in Clark County. We're going to be doing a special exhibit at the end of the month, and there's going to be a kids workshop where they learn how to make their own crystal radio, but they're going to do a program about the history of ham radio and what their group does, and all of that. So that'll be our next virtual program. So thank you very much,
Thank you,
Natalie.
for doing it.
Thank you, guys. Thank you for suggesting this program idea, Bob. Glad we got to do it. So, and I hope you guys come visit the archives if you haven't been there before, and we help you find your family. Have a good night.
Thank
See you next time.
Thank you.
Bye.